Hi everyone, thanks for having us. So we have two simple objectives for this talk. The first one, I'm going to do a brief introduction on why we think NFTs could drive the next crypto adoption. And the second one is to dive a little bit on the Loom Plasma chain and see how it works and what it provides. I'm Nicolas, I'm the CEO of Sorare, which is a platform to collect and play with officially licensed crypto goods.
I'm Adrien, I'm the CTO of Sorare.
So we have been in the crypto industry for a while. We were previously running operations and engineering at Stratum, which is a crypto startup based in Paris, and we left last summer to work on this NFT project. And yeah, so when you think, NFTs are non-fungible tokens, they enable digital scarcity. And when you think about physical collectibles, you see that it's already a huge industry. People are buying 370 billion of collectibles a year. We collect things because we want to make a profit out of it, because we want to achieve a quest, or because maybe you want to be part of a group. And a prerequisite for collecting is, of course, scarcity. When you look specifically at digital goods, you realize that you don't have digital scarcity today because, of course, the web, as it has been built, don't enable for that. And on top of that, when you look at what you get when you buy a digital good today, you don't really own it. Like if you buy something on Fortnite or FIFA, whatever, you cannot trade it, you cannot use it in different applications and different games. Incumbents have no incentive to do anything about it, of course, because they built their business models on these closed ecosystems. And during this time, crypto collectibles are taking off, enabled by, of course, a new standard on Ethereum, ERC 721. That saw a quick adoption by major sport league in particular. Like when you look at the first 4 leagues in the world, they all just launched or are going to launch projects in the space. And most importantly, a strong user traction. So just last year, the equivalent of $200 million of crypto collectibles have been sold. And so we decided to enter this space with the most popular sport in the world, which is football. Just a couple of words about what we are building. So it's a platform where you can collect, buy digital goods representing football players in a couple of clicks with ETH or fiat money. You can then use them in fantasy games. So you just compose your team, and based on the real-world performances of the players on the pitch, you can earn rewards and you can earn ETH. Part of our vision is to bring the next wave of adoption thanks to this product, and we think that earning crypto is something that's very powerful. So you can easily see the flow where in a couple of clicks with your credit card, you buy an officially licensed NFT, you use it, and then you earn crypto and you earn ETH. And of course, you can then do whatever you want with ETH. So that's for the product. Our vision, our conviction is that the Holy Grail is a combination of 3 things. The first one is to use mainstream UX patterns. When you look at the main DApps, the main crypto collectibles project, you see a lot of patterns that are not well known from the mainstream. For instance, Dutch auctions and stuff like that. So we think that we need to adapt and to use simple payment flows and simple patterns. We think that using a premium IP like the main sports league in the world to onboard new people is very powerful as well, because we are sitting on dozens of millions of fans and user bases that already exist. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, of course, is to build that usage value on top of the crypto collectible and to build fun games and exciting games on top of that. So everything we do, we design it for mainstream users. So we think that for a successful blockchain game to work, you don't need to understand crypto to have fun with it. That's the first thing. The official part is important for us as well, as we are using image rights of players and a simple payment flow. And in order to have this simple payment flow, we are using Loom Plasma Chain, and that's for me the moment to let the mic to the CTO so that he can explain a bit more what we are doing on Loom.
Yeah, so as Nicolas said, for various reasons, we decided to build our platform on top of Loom. And we'll try to share with you guys what that meant and share our experience with Loom and try to explain a bit what Loom is, what they do. It's a bit hard because they have lots of stuff. They move fast, so we thought we would have a lot of insight about what Loom is. So Loom, they were first known for Crypto Zombies. Crypto Zombies is an awesome Solidity tutorial that morphed into a game. It's used by a lot of newbies on the Ethereum ecosystem. And if you haven't tried it, I would suggest that you do, because it's really great. So that was the first thing. Then Loom is a SDK for building Ethereum sidechains, and we will dive into that a bit during the presentation. And finally, Loom now describes itself as a platform as a service. And we'll see that means as well. To understand what the vision of Loom and what Loom tries to do, we have to understand the scalability trilemma and why first generation blockchains don't scale very well on layer 1. So the scalability trilemma states that you cannot have at the same time decentralized block production, being the number of people that can produce a block, that can make a block on the blockchain. Scalability that can be measured as the number of transactions per second, and safety that can be measured as the cost of a Byzantine attack, for instance. So Ethereum and Bitcoin before it made a trade-off, made the scalability trade-off, and they considered that decentralization and safety were the most important aspect of a blockchain. And I think we all agree with that, and that's why we are here today. But for some use case, you still need scalability, and there are two approaches for that. The first one is the approach that was taken by EOS. So EOS is a public blockchain that was launched last year, and in theory it can reach up to 10,000 transactions per second. It has a few interesting features as well. For instance, gasless transaction. The end user does not pay the gas for a transaction. The cost of a transaction is borne by the contract owner that has to stake EOS to reserve a certain bandwidth for his contract. But since the beginning, since the launch of EOS, there has been like security issues, security in the broad sense. For instance, some transactions were reverted in the early days. And in the last week, we learned that amongst the 21 validators, only 2 of them store the whole blockchain since the beginning. But yeah, by the way, EOS was able to reach this scalability by using delegated proof of stake consensus mechanism. And that's what leads to like these security issues. There are only 21 validators. And should you choose EOS, you would completely leave the Ethereum ecosystem, because smart contracts are written in C++. They are not using the same wallets. They are not using the same browser extensions. So it could be a valid choice, but you're completely quitting Ethereum. On the other hand, you could another scalability strategy, I'd say, are sidechains. The idea behind it, it's a divide and conquer strategy. Basically, it's saying that if I have 2 blockchains on the aggregate of the 2 blockchains, I can have the 3 pillars of the scalability trilemma. On what's called the main chain, I will have decentralization and safety, and on the sidechain, I will have scalability. And as a user, at any point in time, I can decide if I want decentralization and security, or if I need scalability. And I can switch my asset back and forth between the main chain and the sidechain. So that's the approach that Loom took. They built one of the first Ethereum sidechain. It's based on Tendermint and Ethermint, and that means one of the things that means is that you can write your smart contract in Solidity, and the native currency on Loom is actually Ether. So for user, it's actually great because it's frictionless between the Ethereum main chain and the Loom sidechain. So say you have a use case that requires scalability and you decide to go the sidechain way, and you decide to go with Loom. The first thing that you will have to decide is what protocol you'll use to transfer your assets between Ethereum main chain and your Loom sidechain. There are two ways. One is called Transfer Gateway, and the other is the well-known Plasma Cache. I'll start by describing the Transfer Gateway, since it was the first one available historically. So basically, from a high-level perspective, the Transfer Gateway is just an oracle that sits between the main chain and your Loom sidechain, and that will listen to events on both sides and lock and unlock assets depending on the transaction on both sides. So if you deep dive into what a deposit would look like, a deposit is just transferring your assets from Ethereum main chain to your Loom sidechain. So as a user that owns, in this example, an ERC-721 token, I make a transaction to transfer the ownership to a gateway contract on the Ethereum main chain. This deposit is called by the gateway oracle that, in response, creates a transaction on the Loom sidechain to give me ownership of a copy of that token on the ERC-721 contract on the sidechain. So both contracts are in mirrors. Basically, they should probably have most of the same code, and that makes for a really smooth transfer. The withdrawal process is a bit more involved and complicated, especially on this diagram, but it's just because the gateway oracle does not want to pay for the gas for the Ethereum transaction, so as a user you have to pay for the gas. So that's why there are many more steps, but it can be all abstracted away from the user. So if it's basically the same thing, a gateway oracle that listens to events. So as a user that has ownership of a token on the Loom sidechain, I can transfer the ownership to the gateway contract on the Loom sidechain with a transaction. The event will be picked up by the gateway oracle that will sign a receipt attesting that I locked my asset on the sidechain. I can then use that signed receipt in a transaction on the Ethereum blockchain to unlock my asset and restore the ownership of my asset and my token. So from this description, we can see at least two issues that could happen with this way of transferring asset, the transfer gateway protocol. The first one is that the gateway oracle looks a lot like a single point of failure. The gateway oracle has to secure a private key that it will use for signing, locking and unlocking transactions. And should this private key be compromised, the whole thing would, the whole security of the sidechain would be compromised, because you could, an attacker would be able to lock and unlock assets at will. But Loom has an answer to that, so the oracle can be decentralized. It means you can use multi-sig in the gateway contract, and for instance, only accept receipts that are signed by, say, 4 out of 5 validators. The other issue is that should something bad happen on the Loom sidechain because a validator went rogue or a faulty transaction was accepted, you would not be able to prove the ownership of your asset on the sidechain. And if you're not able to prove the ownership of the token of your asset on the sidechain, you will not be able to unlock it on the main chain. So, so that's why last year, Ethereum researchers and Vitalik introduced the Plasma and the Plasma Cache protocol. The aim is really to secure asset on sidechains. I'm not going to dive into the details of the Plasma Cache protocol, but from a high-level perspective, it's just a contract that sits on the main chain, and you can give it a proof that something bad happened or that everything went fine, and that you have ownership of your asset on the sidechain, and it will unlock your asset on the main chain. So Loom was a pioneer regarding Plasma Cash. They were the first to have a working implementation in production. It was written by Georgios Konstantopoulos, who made a talk here yesterday. So in theory, Plasma Cash is great. In practice, there are three issues that we need to look at. The first one is that as a user, on a Plasma Cash secured sidechain, I have to monitor the sidechain, because monitoring the sidechain is what will allow me to see if something bad happens, and it's what will allow me to unlock my asset on the main chain. The second issue is that transferring assets is a bit more expensive than with the transfer gateway. And finally, the last issue is that it only deals well with non-fungible tokens. You could, in theory, transfer ETH, if you want, from the main chain to the sidechain, but if you were to transfer 1 ETH, for instance, you could only make a transaction with 1 ETH and not with half an ETH. The state of the art basically is that right now the Loom team advised to use the transfer gateway because it will be simpler and cheaper. But if you have a use case that needs high security because you're dealing with really highly valued NFT, the Plasma Cash implementation is available. Once you've made the choice of the transfer protocol, another choice that you have to make is about the architecture of your dApp. Historically, there was only the first one, the custom dApp chain, that was available. And Loom recently introduced another one. It's called Plasma Chain, and that's what we decided to use at Sorare. So a custom dApp chain is it comes from the philosophy of Loom last year that was saying each dApp should have its own sidechain so that it's able to choose its governance, for instance, and hence the name dApp chain. In practice, as a dApp developer, you don't really want to think about the governance of your sidechain. You don't really want to handpick validators for your sidechain. I don't think it's your job, and you want to be focusing on your products. And you want to be using your sidechain as you are using Ethereum, as a public blockchain. And that's why Loom introduced Plasma Chain. So it's a hosted version of their sidechain. So it's a public sidechain, basically. And it has really become their focus, and they will, from now on, really work especially on the Plasma Chain. So it's called Plasma Chain because it supports Plasma Cash, but the transfer gateway, as we saw before, is also available. I'm not going to deep dive into all the bricks of this diagram, but just to show that the Plasma Chain vision is that it will really sit at the center for an ecosystem, and that's what really appealed us also at Sorare. And with this public offering, we can now understand more what that means for Loom to be EOS of Ethereum. So as EOS, Loom has scalability. It has gasless transaction as well. But it's still a sidechain of Ethereum. So at any point in time, you can go back and transfer your asset to Ethereum if you need or you want the safety and the security of Ethereum.
Yeah, just to conclude a couple of words on where we come from and where we are going as a company. So so during the first 6 months, we shipped a working beta. So we are soft launching today to early adopters. We have signed agreements with more than 20 clubs. And yeah, we iterated with a community of early adopters on Discord. So the company has been founded last September, and the next steps are to iterate on the marketplace aspects of our product and on the gaming arena, so the football fantasy game, during the coming weeks. And we aim at a public launch later on this year, with some great announcements to come regarding the official partners and the leagues that will be onboarded on the platform. So yeah, if you're interested in what we are building, you can join the community on sorare.com, and we are happy to answer any questions you could have. Thanks. So our business model is very simple. It's a traditional licensing model as it exists for decades. When, for instance, you buy a shirt from a football club, so you give back part of the sale to the right owner. So that's the same for us. So if we sell an officially licensed NFT, we give back a certain percentage to the club or the league we have a partnership with. Yeah. Yeah, but we are taking care of that. So we are paying the gas for the user, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, we think that's one of the good things with having like a central blockchain like Plasma Chain, is that it will enable way more adoption from the platforms, like to build and to integrate the assets that are on Plasma Chain natively, basically.
So not today, but we are working on integrating a credit card provider so that you can pay with your credit card. For the moment, it's only with ETH, but it's planned for the coming weeks. But it's complicated more for legal reasons, because there's very few credit card provider that accept that you have both crypto and fiat on the platform. So when you talk with Stripe or this kind of guys, they don't want to work with you. So you need to find like creative solutions around that. So we have the World Belgian League. We have a club in the Premier League, which is West Ham, and we have other leagues and clubs that we are going to announce in the coming weeks. Yeah.
Do you guys need to hold Loom tokens? For EOS, you need to hold the tokens to get access to the RAM? Is it similar? No, actually we don't. The only one who needs to hold Loom tokens are the Plasma Chain validators. And if you are a Loom token holder, you can also delegate your Loom token to the validators. But as a contract owner, basically, we don't need to hold Loom tokens.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.